There's a land that is fairer than day, and my faith will see afar. Oh, the Father waits over the way to prepare us a dwelling place there in the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore in the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore. What a fellowship, what a joy on the everlasting arm. What a blessedness, what a peace to lean on the everlasting arm. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarm. Leaning on the everlasting arm. Thou art strong, Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk, let me walk close to thee. Just a closer walk with thee.
this so that our speakers can come up and you'll be able to see them and hear them. We're going to stand right about here. Is this good? Okay. This is all new equipment, so St. Paul is into the 21st century. But we're all getting a little harder to understand and hear, so can everybody hear this? Is this a good spot? Okay. All right, so now we want to talk a little bit about church histories, and we're trying to do these sort of in order of the founders as well as the order that the churches first appeared in the community. So Louise Hudson is the lifelong historian. She has, come on up, Louise, she has given her life to restoring and keeping this church in the shape that it's in now, and she may want to give a plug about the restoration, so it's never without a commercial of some kind. So go ahead, Louise.
We thank you all for coming. It's great to see such a full house. And about our restoration, if you just feel the burning need, donations are always appreciated. We're restoring what you can see around here. And hopefully, as money comes in, we'll do the whole thing in this column over here. And that represents what this building looked like in the very beginning when it was first built and opened. So, but now I would just like to tell you briefly about our church history, or the history of St. Paul as a church organization. And like so many churches in our community, it started out meeting in somebody's house. A lot of times people would get together of like mind and like thought, and they would start meeting and doing Bible studies in a home. And that's how St. Paul started. It was in an old house near where the old Ingold Hotel stands. And this book, of course, was written a long time ago, so it sounds like it is now. But the old Ingold Hotel was originally a home built for C.C. Randleman, who was the son of John Banner Randleman. And the old Ingold Hotel stood right where the First United Methodist Church stands today. So when you get through hearing what I have to say, you will see how everything has come a circle from St. Paul on around. So they started there in the house, and they met there, and after a while, they moved to another place in the community, over here where we now have the I always want to call it the Pilgrim Holiness Church. That was its old name. It is now First Wesleyan Methodist, which is over here on the hill, not far. And there was a building located there that was a school, and it was called Bloomfield School. So what was the beginning of St. Paul organization went from the old Ingold Hotel across town of just a few streets to the Bloomfield School. And then after a while, after the, people outgrow house churches and small groups like that, they decided to have a Sunday school, and it was organized by a man by the name of David R. Caldwell. And he was sometimes referred to as the father of Methodism in Randolph County, or here in Randleman. And he is buried in this cemetery out here. And then after that, about 1855, they decided to build, and were able to build, a wooden building which was located pretty much in the same spot this building is. And I could tell you a little bit about what happened to the original church, but it was a journey from here to there and then back around, so I don't really know all that, so we won't talk about that. But they did build a building here in 1855, and their first pastor's name was Tinnin, Tinnin. And so they decided to organize a Methodist church, and it was called Methodist Episcopal. Now, those of you who are lifelong Methodists will understand what that means. So I won't talk about that. If you don't know, you want to know, I'll tell you later. So after a while, they decided, some of the members and some of our local industrial magnates, or the people who started a lot of the manufacturing here in Randleman, John H. Faree and John Banner Randleman, decided that they had outgrown the little wooden building and they wanted something a little more sophisticated. So they built this building that we're in now in 1879, and that is reported to be, this building, the oldest brick church in the county. Now, we're not the oldest organized church, but just the oldest brick church, because some of the other churches here, I think, maybe were organized before 1855. So that is just a brief history of this building, this organization as a church. And then after St. Paul was built, there was also a Methodist Episcopal church in the little community we call Naomi, which most of you, our local people, will know where that was. And they decided that they needed to come together as one congregation because it was a charge. And that sometimes, they just had church at one time a day and another time, or sometimes it was opposite Sundays. So they came together, which I think, and those of you who belong to the First Methodist, I think it was about 1944 or 40, somewhere in the late 40s, maybe 1946, not the 1946, that they decided to build a church with both congregations united. And so they formed the First United Methodist Church, and it's right back on the beginning where the old Eagle Hotel stood, where St. Paul first started out. So you can see what the circle is. And not only that, but St. Paul has roots in another church here in Randleman that's a very proud and old church, and that is the Louise Chapel United Methodist Church, which you will hear about in a few minutes. And that was originally started for the people by Mr. John H. Faree, who was also here in St. Paul. Now, there may be other connections, but Mr. Randall, I believe Mr. Randleman also was connected with Harshaw. Is there somebody here from there? Is that right, Ms. Fox? Okay, she'll tell us about her history too. But so these two men were very, not knowing, I hesitate, they were either religious or spiritual. Maybe that can go together. I prefer spiritual. But so evidently they were interested in the welfare, the spiritual welfare of the community, and so they have roots in several places of the churches here in Randolph County, or here in Randleman and northern Randolph County. So afterwards, if anybody has any questions, we can talk later.
Good afternoon. I will be speaking on the history of Louise Chapel. As she has spoken, John H. Faree donated us some land, and originally we were right up the hill here. There's a grave or a postmarking of something where we originally were before we moved to our spot that we are in now on Stout Road. Faree's Chapel United Methodist Church was established in 1875 in the Randolph city limit with a pastor and some of the faithful members. It was and is now one of the oldest churches in this area. Although it's not directly located in the place it stands now, the members work diligently together through faith, loyalty, and with a spiritual objective to reach the goal of going from a brush harbor to a church. In later years, some land was donated by a Christ-like man sent by God with the name Mr. John H. Faree. He donated the land on Stout Street to the trustees of the church at that time. Although it was a struggle, the pastor and the members built the church. During the early years of the established church, there were 2 worship Sundays a month. They were first and third Sundays. We have a sister church located in St. Peter, and there was another sister church called Mount Zion. And those services were held at St. Peter's Church on the second and fourth Sundays. Since the congregation steadily increased, there was a desire and determination within the pastor and the members to erect a larger edifice. Under tutelage of the late Reverend T.C. Tarpley, who was very encouraging to the endeavors, always informing the members to put God first, the new and now church edifice was erected. And that is currently where we are right now on Stout Road. That's just a brief history, and of course we know that some of our roots do come from this place, and it's just a pleasure for us to see this place still standing, and because it's always been part of one of our memories. And before I conclude a brief history of what Faree's Chapel has done for the church community in this area, we have produced 3 ministers out of Fareed's Chapel. That's Reverend Ronald Goss, Bishop James Walter Fareed, and the late David Hatchett. Also, in our research, we found that John Heath, the father of the late Worth Heath, and Enoch Womble moved the church from here to its present location. Basically, they mounted it up on a wagon and drug it up to the spot where we are now. Also, we have some books, collection books, as far as records, as far as what we were taking up for offering. I think in 1917, which would be roughly 100 years ago, our average income take up for a Sunday morning was 10 to 13 cents. Just to give you a measure of where we've come and how far we've come. So thank you for your time. That is our history of Fareed's Chapel, United Methodist Church of Brandon, North Carolina.
The history of the St. Peter United Methodist Church has a proud and rich history in the growing community. Today we gather to celebrate its heritage. We give God thanks for this church has survived for 133 years. The institution was founded in 1884 by a number of courageous people who lived in the community and saw that there was a need for a place to worship. According to the best records available at the time that this history was written, the people in the community began to look for a place to build a church. One of the men in the community, Mr. Dennis Colbert, gave the land for the church and the cemetery. A group of early members under the direction of the Reverend M.J. Bullock had their first service under a bush arbor. The record states that the members present were Mr. Ransom Hammond, Miss Lily Sellers, Miss Versie Sellers, Mr. John Sellers, Mrs. Emma Allen, Miss Susie Calvin, Mr. Peter Clark, Mrs. Ida Clark, Mr. J.M. Smith, and Miss Leanne Walker. The Reverend M.J. Bullock organized a building fund. Mrs. Versie Sellers and Mrs. Emma Allen collected the sum of $10 each. Reverend Bullock, being a carpenter, gathered the support of men in the community to help build the first church that was erected, and I think you saw a picture of it. This is our church, the first church. The first marriage in the church took place in 1888 when Mrs. Emma Sellers became the bride of Mr. James Smith. The second wedding was in 1894 when Mrs. Emma Allen became the bride of Mr. J. Amos Laughlin. The third marriage was in 1898 when Mrs. Susie Calvin became the bride of Mr. Joseph Simmons. Throughout the years that followed, the church has served the community in a mighty way by uplifting the Word of God. Today we give honor to the early members who worked and gave their all so that this present membership could have a place to worship. May God Almighty bless all the proud descendants of these founding members. From the history that I had gathered, and I don't have it with me, but I can kind of remember, from the history that I gathered from some of the elderly people in the community before they passed away, was that some of the earlier members of our community had a brickyard, and they made brick, and this was the Waldens. And from my understanding was that they sold brick that built the Ranham School over the first school over here in Ranham Town. And I'm not so sure, but I don't know if this Peter Clark is the same Peter Clark that's on here. I'm not sure about that, but somehow they had a connection between this community and the St. Peter community. So maybe we can find out somehow, know some records way back whether they are related or not, but I'm not sure, you know. But anyway, this was the history of our church, and we have had 144 pastors at our church, and the present pastor we have now, I'm going to tell you his last name because I cannot say his first name. His last name is Amatha, and his wife is Mimi, and they are from Africa. So I don't know how to say his first name, but anyway, we're glad to have them. They're really good for our community. So maybe some of you will get to meet them, you know, sometime or another when we have something. But anyway, that's what I have from St. Peter. Thank you.
I'd like to say at first, I migrated to Ranneman in 1945. When I came to Ranneman, the Baptist church was built. That's like a house, because it had a porch on it, and it had two doors coming in either door on the front. And later they remodeled it and changed it. I can't remember the year they first remodeled it and changed it. It says around 1848, before the Civil War and during a time when black people were counted only as property, a group of people inspired only by the Spirit of God met together in what was called a brush harbor, which is a shell of safety. In the evening when the chores were completed, and on Sunday these people would meet to sing and worship and offer prayer to the Almighty God. Even though it was not popular for black people to read or write, these people were able to steal away to their brush harbor to hear the word of the living God, and were free to become witnesses. In 1865, brought about not only an end of the Civil War, but also an end to the institution of slavery. However, this band of believers continued to steal away in their brush harbor to fellowship in true freedom. The harbor was known only as the Colored Church until 1885. Prior to his death in 1879, John B. Randleman granted land to his free slaves, among who were the Harshaws from Lenore, North Carolina. Early in 1885, Enid Harshaw and his wife Melinda, former slaves, granted a small tract of land on which the first church was erected. I believe that was that church that I'm talking about, the first church, because it's been remodeled and rebuilt several times since then. These people who once were counted as property by the grace of the Almighty God became property owners. As the Harshaw Grove at that time was called Baptist Church under the leadership of the Reverend Anthony Wellborn, due to ill health, he was unable to pastor the church, was constructed and completed. His brother, the Reverend Saul Wellborn, was called as the first pastor. The first deacons were Deacon-elect Hannah, Deacon George McDaniel, Deacon Henry Reynolds. Following the Reverend Saul Wellborn, the following pastors were called to the shepherd. And these are, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8 pastors. Reverend Smith Pettiford, Reverend Moses Craig, Reverend Brown, Reverend A.C. Miller, Reverend Blankenship, Reverend L.F. Wallington, Reverend J.M. Kennedy, Reverend W.E. Kearns, and Reverend Joseph Evans. In 1972, under the leadership of Reverend Joseph Evans, the present structure was erected and Grove was officially added to the church cornerstone. I believe the first cornerstone has 1865 on it. That was when the first renovations was done. The following deacons will serve faithfully on the Board of Deacons unto their deaths: Deacon Thomas Brickhouse, Deacon Matthew Evans, Deacon George E. McDaniel, Deacon W.H. Hayes, Deacon L.W. Harshaw, Deacon J.C. Spencer, Deacon W.T. Hayes, Deacon George W. Fox, Deacon Winfred L. Evans, Deacon Fred Green, Deacon Willie Smith, Deacon Charlie Hatchett, Deaconess Annie Smith, Deaconess Mary Hatchett, Deaconess Ardelia Hayes, and Deaconess Viola Green. The oldest deceased member on record was Brother Mac Harshaw, age 104 years of age, and Sister Bertha Sauer. Her age was supposedly 116 years when she passed. In 1982, our present pastor, Dr. W.D. Roseman, who is still our pastor, was called to be the 12th shepherd, and he has been serving, will be 33 years this year in June. On June 28, 2016, the Lord saw fit to take home Deacon James Coble, who served as the chairman of the deacon board as well as Sunday school teacher, male, and gospel choir member. In 2013, the Lord saw fit to take home Deacon Worth McCain, who served as the vice chairman of the board and was a senior deacon at that time. He was, I'm not going to try to tell his age, but he was a senior deacon. When Reverend Evans was there, they renovated the church. It was a white church on that picture, white brick wooden church. They had renovated the old church to be a white wooden church with just straight steps go up. It had a vestibule on the inside, and you went on in the church. In 1972, Reverend Evans and the deacons wished to change the church again, so they removed that church and they built another church. They built a brick church. The first part of that church was this church. Later on, we needed more room. We needed a baptismal, and we had to go borrow a baptism. And when we wanted to baptize somebody, they had to go to other church and borrow their baptismal. So in 2013, we began another construction of a new wing. And the groundbreaking, no, it was 2014, the groundbreaking service for this construction of the new wing of our church house was in May 25th, 2014. We have upstairs fellowship, a church office, pastor's office, restrooms, and a baptistry, and also a kitchen and dining hall. That's the new addition on the back of this church. If you come through Bowman Road out to 311, we sit right on the corner of Bowman Road and 311. And this church, that part was dedicated in the second Sunday in December 2014. Our knowledge, the first churches, the Wellborns, organized three churches that I know of in this area. I think they were from out of Thomasville. They organized the Liberty Grove Baptist Church, the Harshaw Grove Missionary Baptist Church in Randleman, and also the Greater St. John Baptist Church in Asheboro. They was organizers of those churches. That's about it. You're talking now. No, and we still have some of the Harshaw members still living in this area. Miss Ernestine Cole is one, but she's not here today. Miss Bertha Goss and several of the younger people are still members of the original Harshaw family.
So we have a lot of benefactors in the Randleman community, and for that we can be grateful. And certainly John Banner Randleman was the town's naming itself after him. I think he was a worthy townsman, and also brought a lot of work. Yes, brought a lot of work to the Randleman area. People needed jobs, and so they were glad to have the first, I think, cotton mill and then eventually hosiery came into Randleman too. And then Mr. Faree was his partner in their industrial endeavors, and they are both buried out here in the cemetery. They have nice, large tombstones and their families, and some of the artwork in here was painted by children, their children. And we're currently working with a class at UNC Greensboro, who is, that particular class is architecture, interior architecture, but also architecture of buildings, and this particular class is on restoration. And so they have come down once already in March, and they'll come at the end of the month to take pictures. And if you look around, you'll see that there were beautiful drawings, paintings on the wall, the arches and the pillars. Pillars just like this one were painted all the way around. So we believe that the Randlemans and the Farees had done a lot of research in Europe on this kind of art and architecture, and so they poured a tremendous amount of money into this building. My dad is, there are a couple people still here who attended this church when it was St. Paul Methodist Church, and the balcony upstairs was used for Sunday school classes. There are two over there that are being very quiet about this, Nancy Henderson and Jerry Robbins. But the Sunday school classes were held in the balcony, and they had partitions in between. But as the story goes, there was chicken wire around the edge of it just to prevent children from falling over into the sanctuary. So I don't know if chicken wire could hold back some kids today, but it was there anyway.
What kind of wood is this?
What kind of wood? Good question. Louise, the wood on the balcony?
Well, actually, I think most of the wood that's in here is most likely heart pine. The balcony, the woodwork has been what's called faux painting to represent a more expensive wood. But in that era, heart pine was the most prominent building material, and it lasts. When it gets hard, they say not even termites can eat it. So we think everything most likely is heart pine, but painted to look like a little more expensive.
Very excellent. And this has been restored to its original, hasn't it, Louise?
The balcony has.
There's two original panels.
Yes, good point. This darker one is an original. One thing we want to highlight about the restoration work that we're doing is, and you can see, I'm standing in front of this column, but over in the corner there is the top of a column that has been researched and painted by Andy Compton, who is working with us when he's not working at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. or Monticello or Mount Vernon, and has done all of the research of the colors and the actual painting around the edge of the stained glass. So he's done all of that. Our goal is to continue to just go around, and as we have a few dollars here and there, to actually restore everything here that we can. So it's a big task, but we need lots of members, and we need younger people than me to help come up with some things to do. You might be one of those. I mean, Danny Watley is a member, and he's also younger than me, is the point I was trying to make. So. Peggy,
I would also like to say, if anybody would like a bit of immortality, for a mere $500, you can get your plaque beside a column. You will help to restore. You need only
And you don't have to rush. We can take names and checks later.
we have to always be begging. We do apply for some grants. They're not always forthcoming, but money is hard to find for this type of work, but we are very grateful for anything that we get. And no gift is too small.
I will also say that this is the only church that Jules Corner ever painted. There's not another church as it was originally painted anywhere in the state or in the southeast, or so far as we know any place. This is truly a unique painting for an interior of a church.
And that's Jules Kerner of Kerner's Folly and Kernersville.
His professional name was Reuben Reed.
But the instructor from UNCG is thrilled with the work that they're planning to do, which is to create some 3D photos that we can show on our website that will be informative about how they think that the building was built. And also, just to be able to work in here. She says there is no place, no church like this in the South with this kind of window, or at least in North Carolina that she is aware of. So we feel like it's a real treasure, and there are a number of our members here who have worked for years and years, and still some of us working. So we would encourage anybody to join us. Your annual dues is simply $10. So if you want to get involved, we'd be thrilled to have you.